I'm so pleased to have Jessica Shumlich, the CEO of Highwood Emissions Management. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Highwood EIP is designed to deliver audit-ready methane inventories. How has this innovation transformed emissions management for African oil and gas operators?
Yeah, absolutely. So Highwood's Emissions Intelligence Platform, or EIP for short, is a software that allows organizations to bring their different types of emissions profiles together to actually truly understand where their emissions are coming from. So from an African context, it's important to know where your emissions are coming from so that you can reduce them. First of all, you understand which components are leaking more, where are the emissions coming from, but also it's an enabler for market access to different jurisdictions. So the European Union, for example, is starting to have stricter and stricter methane regulations, and it's really important that African operators are able to comply with those international regulations, and we enable that in a very easy, auditable, and scalable way.
And what role does automation play in reducing costs and cutting reporting timelines for companies pursuing the OGMP 2.0 gold standard recognition?
Absolutely. So OGMP stands for Oil and Gas Methane Partnership. It's a United Nations-led program, and it can be complex. It can be difficult. There's guidance for how to comply with it, but there's still a lot of gaps on actually how to implement it. And so automation is really important because otherwise you're doing it by hand and you're doing it by spreadsheets, and it takes lots of time and lots of resources. So I personally come from an operator background, and I understand how precious those resources are. In this case, you're able to focus, the operator is able to focus on what they want and need to do, i.e. running the operations, ensuring that they're getting production. And we take all of the complexity out of that and make sure that we can do that quickly and efficiently.
And with African nations focusing on low carbon oil and gas, how can your software support the local operators to improve environmental performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think historically what would happen is either we wouldn't be reporting our emissions, or if we were reporting our emissions, they would be based on some sort of antiquated numbers, old numbers, maybe a study from the 90s, something like that. This way we can bring all of the information together. We can help automate it. We can help those operators know where they are, and so they can spend their precious resources, their precious capital on running their business efficiently and spending the money on the actual projects that reduce the emissions. So it's very helpful for operators, and it will be helpful for, like I said, market access for African operators for the European Union.
And how important is African Energy Week for engaging African operators on the benefits of emissions management and compliance technologies?
Yeah, great question. So this is my first African Week, or African Energy Week is my first time in Cape Town. So right now what we're trying to do is really educate African operators that this regulation in Europe is coming. I used to live in West Africa, and so I'm just very passionate about helping African operators enable access into the European market. Obviously, there's a lot of choices for where oil and gas is sold. It can be domestic, or to other jurisdictions such as the Asia Pacific. But I think the European Union's mandate is something that's easily compliable by African operators. And if they're able to understand this regulation, comply with this regulation, that's a major market for African operators. So.
And just my final question, what message will you be sharing at African Energy Week about the role of technology in balancing emissions reduction with Africa's growth?
I just think that there's so much potential in Africa, and I think that African operators are on the forefront of being able to provide domestic oil and gas for Africans, as well as be able to export their market. So technology is important, operating your assets is important, cost efficiency is important, of course, and I think that we're at a new age where all of those can be balanced.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.